And that's understandable. But here's the thing with me. I've been fighting HISD and fighting for an appropriate education for children in underserved communities since seemed like since I first started teaching.
Yeah. But you know what, Michelle? I'm going to say this. This is something that was very so frustrating for me because at that time, I was still a teacher at HISD too. I was entering into my 14th year teaching in HISD. It had been for the most part the only school district that I taught in too. Okay. I was a later bloomer, but I've been there for 14 years. This was my issue. In 2023, 1 week before we came back to school, we received an email, not a letter, but an email, 1 week before we came back to school. And it was an email from our principal saying that we need for you to come back for a meeting here on, I think it was on Thursday or Tuesday or something like that, on Wednesday. Okay? You don't have to come, but we would like for you to come. So that was kind of curious for all of us. So when we got there, the principal, he's now the principal at Sharpstown High School. Okay. The principal said, move in some, Rebecca, come this way. The principal said that they were no longer going to be the principal at that school. And there were going to be some changes, and he felt that these were really, really good changes that were coming along. And we would not, some things were going to be different. We would not be, how was this put? We would not have any extra hours that we would have to put in. We would have assistants in our room to help us with our learning. Help us with our teaching. And everything sounded really good. But the thing about it was, that was to take place. Now, mind you, this was on a Wednesday. The 45th day for us to be able to give notice to leave the district if we didn't want to be there with these changes that we had no idea were taking place was going to be that Friday. So what made me really have a bad taste initially is that I'm being given this information on Wednesday. My ability to resign the district and go elsewhere was going to be less than 48 hours away. I couldn't interview anywhere else. Even if I wanted to seek out another position and I wanted to interview, there wasn't enough time for me to be able to set up an interview and get to an interview. So to me, that was very strategically planned for myself and thousands of other teachers not to be able, because several people would have taken that escape clause if they had been able to. Okay. But it was set up so that basically we were pigeonholed right there and we couldn't do anything. And I immediately started contacting my union and I couldn't get any answers. They were telling me that, there several people are having the same issue and we're trying to figure out the best way to be able to navigate this. Because when you're bombarded by all this at one time, with thousands of people, then you cannot navigate it the same way you would with one or two people. So, long story short, I stayed with HISD until November of that year, okay, which was only about 3 months. And I went ahead and left for another school district. But what happened is that there were so many people who were upset and there were so many legalities that were taking place that were not in line with what they should have been, that they had to give an escape clause, which was the resignation without consent.
Well, honestly, I'm gonna tell you, the reason why y'all were able to get out of your contract is because I went to the board meeting and asked for it. Because Miles had made the comment to in a principal's meeting that if teachers wanted to leave, let them leave.
That's right.
You can leave. I said, so I went to the board meeting after I was told, and I told her, I said, so if you're around here saying this to the principal, then let them out of their contracts.
That's
Next
right.
thing I know, they were gone.
But you know what? The thing about it is, let me tell you this, and let me tell you why that was not the case initially. That was not the case
Not
initially.
at first.
Because even when I left, it was something that we were asked not to say to anyone else. So there wasn't a widespread email that went out that said the teachers want
No.
to get out of there. You see what I
It
mean?
wasn't an
Yeah.
email. It wasn't an email, but what happened was I told people to start asking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the only thing they can say
And
is
that's what I
no.
did.
And they were letting people out. I know several teachers that left and went to other school districts. And I don't have a problem with people leaving
No.
the school district. I mean, everybody's not going to stay in HISD.
Right.
Everybody's not going to stay in education
Right.
under this hostile
Yeah.
takeover
Right.
of public education. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I tried to do what was best for teachers to give them an out because I knew I wasn't going to work. Because I told my state president, you know, because I had done all my homework on Miles.
Right.
Because that's one of the benefits of being in a union.
Yes.
We have locals everywhere.
Right.
So I had already talked to the president from Ector County.
Yes.
And she had given me the information. I had spoken Dawn Miller, the one who finally flipped on Miles and said that she was on the board, the Tribune, not Tribune, Josephine, what is that? That is. The Texas Tribune did a story on her about how she used to work for Miles. She and I had a conversation about him.
Mm.
And she's one of Ector County School District's board members.
And tell us where Ector County is.
Ector County is in Odessa, Texas.
Okay.
So,
Isn't that where Riddick from?
yes, he's from Midland, which is not far from there.
Same county, right?
In the same area.
Okay.
But, you know, they finally flipped on her because in her article, they were trying to put pressure on her to vote to keep the school in under Third Future. But she did the right thing, which I was surprised because the conversation she and I had, she was like, oh, well, I'm getting this money. You know, everybody else, and that's fine, do what you do, but I hold myself to a different
High standard, yeah.
expectation.
Right.
And, you know, she abstained from the vote and they started harassing her like they do with the teachers in HISD, and they fired her. And she went on, she filed a complaint with the state of Texas because, or TEA, because they were falsifying students' records.
Whoa.
Yeah, they weren't giving.
What's new, Michelle?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, so, you know, I'm not surprised about them not being transparent. They're not transparent about anything.
Well, and here's the thing, and I know this is that's one of the main reasons why you decided to throw your hat in the ring, because if nothing else, you want the people that we are answering to be transparent with us.
Correct.
Because if a superintendent does not sit in a vacuum,
You're not.
there are thousands and thousands of people that make that person able to be successful or unsuccessful. And when you have people who have the power to make you successful or not, it seems like you would want some type of legitimate dialogue with them. But has that been the case?
No, from the beginning, you know, and I never expected me or saw myself in this position, because what people fail to realize, I rechartered HEA in 2019.
Okay.
So we were just getting started.
Okay.
But I never saw myself up against him. I did exactly what I have always done, is to speak up for our students and to advocate when things were wrong.
Right.
And that's what landed me in this position. I didn't see myself going up against him. Dr. Michelin from Westbriar, after she was terminated, she and I had a conversation about Miles.
Dr. Leah Michelin, yeah.
Yeah, she said that, I think she left a comment on Facebook.
Mhm.
She was like, because I filed a copyright infringement complaint against HISD. That's why the MRS strategies, they changed them to his strategy.
Right.
Right.
Because I
That's
told
like
them,
the Kagan strategy.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
Kagan and everybody. I said, you cannot take, that was classic copyright infringement.
Right.
So she left a comment saying that she questioned it in one of their meetings, and he asked her, who have you been talking to, Michelle Williams?
Wow.
I'm not surprised though.
Wow.
Wow.
But here's the thing, Michelle. As you embark upon a place probably that this time last year you didn't even see yourself
I
here.
didn't.
But as you embark up on this and you have had the conversation with teachers from across not just Houston, but across Texas about the direction that we are going in as far as public education is concerned here in Houston, starting with here in Houston, okay? Starting with here in Houston, because this seems to be ground zero, okay? Starting with here in Houston, what made you decide that somebody had to stand up and not just toe the line?
It was
Because I would say that a lot of our people down in Austin right now are just towing that line. Nobody wants to rock the boat.
So
What made you
it
decide
was
to
a
rock the
couple
boat?
of things.
Mhm.
I mean, I've always advocated. I've been to Austin a couple of times. When I was on administrative leave while y'all was at school, first week of school, I was down in Austin for 2 days
Right.
with the first public education hearing committee and speaking there. But the last time, I think the 24-hour marathon when with the public education committee hearing, because we waited for 24 hours to speak. And Charles Cunningham made this,
Mhm.
and I want to preface this because he's a black man.
Okay.
And a
And
black
explain to everybody who Charles Cunningham
Charles
is.
Cunningham is the current state representative for House District 127.
Which encompasses what area of Houston?
It's Aldine, Westfield, Spring, to Humble, Atascocita,
Okay.
Huffman, and New Caney.
Like Northeast Houston,
Yes.
Harris County. Okay.
So, he made the comment, about Brown v. Board Education.
Right.
And he woke up because he had been asleep prior to that. Yes.
He
was
was literally sleeping?
Yeah. He was
Okay.
asleep. Yeah,
Okay.
he was asleep. So then I guess he
He heard something that, okay.
Yeah, and he was like, well, I'm gonna say that, education back then, it was about school choice. I said, and
What?
I was awake, because
The whole time, yeah.
yeah, because HISD has prepared me for these marathons
Right.
prior to the
Yeah, for real.
these appointed people.
Right.
Because we used to hold it down and had it made
Yeah.
for until about 11 p.m.
You're right.
Yep. So,
One,
I,
2 o'clock in the morning.
I'm built tough, so I'm up.
Right.
And I'm listening to what he was saying, and he was like, it's about school choice and parental choice. And
What was he must have been dreaming about something that didn't take place in that room.
because we know that was about separate and unequal.
Oh, that's right.
I said,
And
and
how did he get school choice on?
because what he was doing is placating
Yes.
to
Exactly.
the narrative that
Right.
they were pushing about parents. It was not about that.
Right.
And there are people who do not share our melanin that will tell you that was back in those days that's not what it was about. It was about what they're doing now with public education, not educating children of color. And I'm talking about all color, whether you're lighter brown,
Right.
darker skin, all minorities, they do not want to educate them. What people fail to realize in HISD, when I first started teaching, Asians didn't have their own demographic. Guess who Asians were coded as?
Uh-huh,
Right.
Yep.
yes,
And people don't know that. That was 20 years ago.
wow.
So they were boosting their numbers and they didn't have their own demographic. So it's a lot of things in education that are smoke and mirrors, but that was the defining moment for me. And I was like, we can't continue down this path because I'm like, this man was 10 years from a decade from the movie Glory because he's a retired Army veteran. And I'm like, you, sir, benefited from that as well.
Right.
Because we know that the Army was segregated.
Right.
There are plenty movies about it. And for these Black politicians,
To say some stuff.
right, to say something like that, first of all, it's disrespectful.
It is, it is.
And then you are basically turning your back on yourself. It's like
That's right.
self-hate.
It's a form of self-hatred, it is.
That's
It's a form of
what,
self-hatred.
and I was so, it just kind of disturbed me. And
But is it a form of self-hatred, or is it I'm empowered? I want to stay empowered.
I think
And
it's a
this is what I gotta do.
I think it's a form of self-hatred because you do not want to, you will do anything to fit in and be accepted by who you feel holds the power or position to help you. That's what I feel.
Uh-huh.
That's what I feel.
yeah, and it's really
And it's
concerning.
widespread.
And it is,
It's
it
widespread.
is. It's I don't know how to explain it. I lived in Louisiana for 5 years. Because I kind of was just tired of the whole testing thing. So I went to Louisiana around the time Hurricane Katrina recovery was taking place.
Yes.
And I learned a lot about school reform. And this is what I took away from
Were you teaching in
Louisiana.
Louisiana?
Yes.
Okay.
I took away that there's money in failure.
Yes. Explain that, Michelle.
When I say there's money in failure, so when Hurricane Katrina went through New
Mhm.
Orleans, there were a lot of, they tore up Orleans Parish public school system. And they were, all these fly-by-night charter schools were
Popping up.
popping up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was happening is that everybody was getting money for the children. Like some of the charter schools didn't have desks, books,
Right.
anything. The kids were on the floor.
I heard
Like
about
it was
that.
a lot of stuff that was going on, and I was there for
Yeah.
it. I was in East Baton Rouge Parish at the time, but they didn't. Everybody was getting paid,
Wow.
and because it was
At the expense of the children.
yeah. So what I realize is that anytime there's failure, and Miles is no different, HISD no different. What is he doing? He's pumping money because I just left a conference in Chicago and I talked to one of the teachers there who is from Jasper, Texas, and they said the school that he has in Jasper, Texas did not, it's still failing. It's still horrible.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's still open?
Yeah, it's still open. He had, this is, I think, first or second year, but they didn't have any
Now,
movement.
and there is also a school in Ector County, you said.
Yes, they don't have it anymore. Ector County,
that actually closed down.
no, that was, so what happened with Ector Intermediate,
Right.
Ector County lost the school. They turned it over to the state.
Okay.
And the state,
Allowed third.
yes, in that whole situation,
Yeah.
which I feel like is money laundering, but hey, whatever.
Right.
They only had it for so long. If a school makes progress, you can vote to get the school back
Got you.
after so many years. And that's what Don Miller was talking about. That's why she abstained from the vote, because she was working for Third Future.
Yeah.
So it was a conflict of interest,
Right.
which she did the right thing.
Yes.
So they got their school back last summer.
Okay.
But then he has another school in Beaumont.
Yes.
Not anymore.
Stop.
Okay.
No, that's the one that we saw the little commercial for. It was a production.
No. So let me tell you about Beaumont. And
We
this,
saw that production. Yeah.
and this is also a benefit of having local, being part of the union, because I know teachers, I talked to the president down in Beaumont. What happened with that school is Third Future was pressuring the district to take money from their other schools to fund the schools that they had. So and you can check our website, I mean our YouTube channel, because I was interested in the board meeting. I took the clip and put it on our YouTube channel because I
Okay.
want people to know what kind of game is being played with public education.
Right.
So since the president, the board president, and the board members would not do that, and she said that in the video, we're not going to take money from other schools to fund this school, which low enrollment, just like HISD.
I seems like I remember seeing that clip.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
I saw
was,
that clip.
yeah,
Yeah.
that low enrollment, and they were kicking kids out because of discipline. And one of the board members said at the meeting, he said no other school would be able to operate with low enrollment and a high suspension rate.
Right.
So since Third Future could not get its way, and they wouldn't, like the board member said, it was that was hostile, and they were trying to basically bully them. They pulled out and dropped the school on its head. The school's on their heads.
Third Future pulled out.
Yep. Now this is supposed to be a vendor for the school district, a vendor for the school district, a vendor through the state. They should be not able to be, in my opinion, to be a vendor if you breach contract.
Right.
And that was a breach of contract because, like the board president said, they knew how much money the school was bringing in, and they agreed to that contract, but they pulled out. And she said in the video that the guy, I don't know his name, who represents Third Future,
Right.
didn't even stay there the whole time for the meeting.
Okay. Okay, Michelle, if it's one thing I can say, and Rebecca can attest to this, Michelle does her fact checking. She does her research. I bet she is up all hours of the night making sure that before she comes forward and says anything, she's got her facts straight. Now, Michelle, with that in mind, you have some very strong opinions on some of these House bills that have been pushed and pushed and pushed through the legislature this time, and quite possibly to the detriment of public education in Texas. Tell me, let's start at the beginning. Let's start with Bluebonnet.
Separation of church and state.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this, I'm a believer, and I don't say Christian because they've hijacked that term.
They have, yes.
And
Yeah, I'm starting to get uncomfortable saying Christian.
I don't say Christian, I'm a believer.
Right.
But my beliefs should not infringe on other people's rights.
Absolutely.
And that's where I stand at. I had someone asking me, well, how can you be pro-choice? I said, I'm for the right to choose. I said, I don't govern other women's uteruses.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Right?
So like, I'm not concerned about, they do what's best for their situation
That's right.
at the time.
That's
And
right.
at the end of the day, you don't know what it's like to be pregnant and not want to be pregnant.
Right.
And that's why I have to ask men, have you ever had that feeling?
Yeah.
Because I can ask plenty of women
Right.
and they can tell you they've been there.
Yeah.
So,
Or what it's like for a doctor to tell a woman, you got one or two choices. You either get this baby out of you and you don't die.
right,
And you got 3 other children that you gotta raise.
right.
Yeah.
And a husband. Or you got 3 other children and you're a single mom.
Yeah.
So and you have to make that decision right away. Like you don't even have time to sit and think and
Well, here's the position, and then we'll go back to that choice thing, Michelle. Here's the position that a lot of women are put in. Their condition has to go into a life or death fight with her life on the line in the emergency room for them to do anything. And doctors have been saying it should not have to get to that point.
Yeah.
You know, because once someone goes to that point, so many times, so many of the other organs may have been damaged by then that they may not ever be the same, you know?
Okay.
But, well, Michelle, tell us about this. Bluebonnet is one of those kind of things. There was a big fight. There was a big fight about that because Houston and Texas has become one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the nation. Okay, one of the most diverse cities. And what does that say about how we respect these people who have come to our country from other places, who are contributing to our economy, who are contributing to our the well-being, to our tax base, about how we respect their belief system?
Well, I mean, it goes further than that. I mean, how do you respect their children that you're teaching?
Right.
At the end of the day, our beliefs, again, you don't even have to respect it. Just don't talk about it.
Exactly. Don't
and-
bring it up. And it's worked
Right.
well. It's
And that's
worked well
what
for
I'm
all
saying.
these years.
Especially for the subject that we teach from
Yeah.
6th through 12th grade.
Yeah.
History.
Yeah.
Religion is mainly taught. 3/4 of the subject is taught religion. 75% is taught religion. Of course, you got government and geography and all of that, but most of it is
But we don't go into belief systems.
religion. Well, technically we do, because a lot of these nations were formed.
Well, but we don't go into the belief system
Yeah,
there.
yeah. But I'm just saying, a lot of these nations were formed because of religious differences, or
Absolutely.
religious beliefs.
And that's where I leave it.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. So for the legislature to say, and that's why I said this is why we do need more educators in the legislature. We need more educators on TEA board. Do you know, I did the research. There is not a single person on the TEA board, state board, TEA board, that is a teacher or have any classroom background.
The State Board of Education?
No, there's some.
No. The TEA, I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Okay.
The TEA that makes the decisions for,
Stable SBOE.
so there is some.
There are,
Stacy's one.
Okay.
Stacy's the teachers. The class.
and also the SBOE member from Frisco. She's a former educator.
Yeah.
But that's my thing. Like, y'all know this already, especially if you've been in the classroom. You know what the curriculum is like.
But you know what? I'm gonna have to say this because we sat with Stacy on many occasions on this very platform, and we know that was a tight vote.
Right.
We know that there were several
She
people.
agree with it.
That's right, and there were other people. I think it was, did they say 7 to 8 or 6 to 7 or something like that. But it was right there in the middle.
Yeah.
And just by a very small margin, it passed. But several people felt just like us, and I'm sure probably the educators sitting on that panel felt the same way.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, a lot of these are going to end up in litigation. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, we said that too.
And it's on the parent side and on the teacher side, because first of all, let's be clear, and I didn't pay attention to history.
Mm-hmm.
Just let that be known.
That's okay. No,
I
don't
teach
fence tape.
math,
Don't fence
and
tape.
science.
Yeah.
So my thing is, the United States ain't never been a Christian nation.
No,
You're right about
no, it hasn't. But here's the thing, Michelle. Here's the thing. We have functioned this long and produced some very successful and effective people without having a Judeo-Christian place in the classroom.
And that's what Stacey said. That was the main argument for the people that was coming up speaking for Bluebonnet. Because they said that the discipline is so out of control in these schools. And if we bring back prayer in school, we bring back Bible teaching in school, if we have these lessons centered around Christian values, then the discipline.
I'm gonna tell you this, okay? So we're gonna talk about, and this is what I read, and I read a lot. I come from a family of readers. Do you know? So, and it's sad that they framed it this way.
Mm-hmm.
The Democratic convention, when they come to town, all the escorts, the women get calls and they make the money. But you know, when the Republican National Convention, guess who gets the money? The male escorts. That was written. And that's why I have a problem when they say if we bring back, since when did it doesn't stop them. It doesn't stop the pedophilia
Yeah.
that's happening in the Catholic Church.
Right.
And it
Right.
doesn't stop anything.
Right.
Or in
Because people are
as
gonna
we
do what they
found
want.
out, in the Second Baptist Association, they have $67 million worth of lawsuits of little girls who have been molested from the ages of 9 and 18.
Absolutely. So and that's what I'm saying. It has nothing to do with it. What they are doing is they have hijacked and politicized
A narrative.
Christianity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Much like this whole transgendered ambassador
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
They have hijacked, and Commissioner Morath is complicit in that because that's a policy issue, meaning we should not even be talking about it.
Right.
If you are the governing body of public schools,
Right.
then the governing body should make a yay or nay
Right.
on how we're going to deal
With the issue.
with the issue.
Yeah.
So when people, and I know it's going to come up because they're going to say, well, the unions support this. We support children.
Right.
So
I'm so glad you said
at
that.
the end of the day,
I'm so glad you
if they come to us, and I've had kids, I had one that when I was working at Cashmere High that used to dress up, painted his face. We loved him no different.
That's right.
I was
That's
afraid
good.
for
That's
him
good. Yeah.
because I told him, no, go down no alleyway by yourself, baby, because
But the kids in school left them alone.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's what we do.
Yeah.
We take care of the children that show up. And that should be an issue.
That's right.
What he has allowed the governor to do and the Republicans to hijack that issue. It's a non-issue. And I'm not going to even debate about it. I'm not going to even address it because why didn't the commissioner of education, who speaks on everything else,
Right.
not address that issue from a governance standpoint?
Right. Right. Michelle, well, let me ask you this. Okay, right after Bluebonnet came the school vouchers. Okay, we're not talking about the Bluebonnet didn't have a chance to take a nap. And then we got the school voucher issue that came up to be voted on. Okay. People were very, very passionate about school vouchers and what they were and what they weren't going to be. What's your take on vouchers?
Here's where I'm going to stun you all. I didn't go to public school until my junior year.
I didn't either.
So my point is, private education is no better than public education.
This is what I've been needing people to speak on. I've had a public school experience my whole entire life. So I never had the opportunity to sit in the educational arena.
Mm-hmm.
Both of you have. So what is the real difference between private school and public school?
It's a sheltered life.
That's it.
You get
That's
to
it.
control, and let's be clear.
The environment. Yeah.
The environment, and it's no better. The private school kids are doing more than the public school. In private school, I was offered a lot of things before, and even in public, only thing they offered me in public school was liquor.
Right.
The people in the private schools, they offered cigarettes.
Yeah.
I was in 9th grade.
Yeah. And you know what? I will say this. The difference to me in being in private school is that, and what I've observed as a teacher in private school is that they have the ability legally to control the environment. Okay. If you have they put out, at my school, they put out girls who were pregnant. They, if you were caught with any type of drug, they could remove you from the, that was that's in their governance. They can do that. So they think that they're removing the elements away from the general populace, but everybody knows that on the weekends or after school, those kids, they do whatever they want to do, But so, as far as vouchers, what is your take on that?
The vouchers, you should never use taxpayers' money to pay for private education. Private education, it's like, okay, this is how I'm going, because we're teachers.
Yeah.
You got a Honda. A Honda is a great car.
Right.
Durable.
Okay. So the base model is public education.
Right.
You want a Acura because that's a Honda too.
That's right.
Guess what? You're gonna have to pay for it.
Right.
And it's a luxury. Private school is not a necessity. And does private school have like Texas public policy? And they have that TSU viewing of, I forgot the name of the movie, and they're pushing private schools. Yes, some kids have been saved from private school, but they could have benefited from another setting, period.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily
Exactly.
say that private is better. It's
Right.
not. It's another educational setting.
It is.
And that's all it is. There's nothing magical about private schools. Truth be told, a lot of private schools, you can't fail the kids because guess what? The parents are paying the tuition.
Right.
And it's a lot of stuff that goes on in private schools that is not preparing those children for the real world.
Right. And see, that's what I thought, right? I've always believed, because, just watching shows and listening to other people's experience, I thought that private school kids are better prepared academically.
Not necessarily. A lot of them
That's
cheat.
right.
Okay.
And for the ones who don't cheat, I have got some kids who sat in my classroom just a month and a half ago that I know are very much prepared for what they're going to encounter going into high school. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily the case. I'm going to say this again. The difference to me is that in private schools, they can legally control that environment. Okay. And when you can legally control the environment, yes, you're going to have a different setting in the classroom. But the kids who come in there are identical. No difference at all in the children who come into private schools and public schools. No difference. They do the same kind of things. They have the same type of
So is this
tendencies. No, that's what I mean when I say you can control the environment. If somebody acts up one time and it's deemed that it's extreme, they can be expelled.
But they don't necessarily put them all out because again,
Yeah.
they're paying tuition. And the parents that pay for a lot of different things, their kids get away with murder.
Okay.
And that's my point. Like private schools, these parents who are trying to get these vouchers cannot afford private schools.
No.
Because what a good private school, like straight, like Episcopal,
Yeah.
like all of those schools,
St. Agnes.
Yeah.
Alma mater. Yeah.
Kincaid.
yeah, Kincaid, they're not. And then Kincaid's not going to take vouchers. You know why? Because they have their own scholarship program.
Yeah.
They're not. And I know they have their own. A teacher I know, her son went through Kincaid.
Yeah.
I told her not to send him over there. She did anyway.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I mean, it's a parent's choice. But if I believe we need to spend our money, which is my money,
Tax dollars.
because people pretend as if teachers don't pay taxes.
Right.
I pay a whole bunch of taxes.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we want to return on our investment,
Yeah.
which is public schools.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
It's
right.
not private school.
Right.
So Michelle, tell me this. The last issue that has really come up and that's been on the hotbed seat, and I know you all next week are going to have a symposium where teachers actually get to come forward and address some of the people who actually wrote the bill for what is going on for the state takeover, who's some Democratic lawmakers from the Houston area. And they're going to get a chance to face Houston and answer questions on exactly what's going on with that. And Rebecca, y'all talk about that for a second, and I'll be right back. Tell me the date of that, Michelle.
That's going to be next week, Thursday, June 26th. And I'm going to say this. It's not a contentious forum. And there's a lot of misinformation out there about House Bill 1842.
Can
And
you
I-
explain to the people what House Bill 18?
All right, so House Bill 1842 is a bill that was co-authored by Representative Dutton and 4 other people. So people are saying, well, that's his bill. No, if you look up the bill, it was co-authored by him and 4 other people. Also, Paul Bettencourt, who is a Republican and a state senator he's in the Senate from Houston. So they co-authored this bill saying that if a school fails 5 consecutive years, then the state has the option to take it over. But what people don't fail to realize, the original text in the bill was to close down the school or take it over. It wasn't the school. It was just a lot of stuff that was going on in that bill. As a matter of fact, they had 20 amendments to the bill.
Wow.
And when I say there's a lot of misinformation, and I don't want people to think I'm defending anyone, but I'm of the belief that if a person did something and you have proof that they did it, then they did it.
Right.
But don't go around saying that someone did something when in fact they did not. So I've been having this conversation in the HISD teacher group about House Bill 1842 because teachers have been saying that Representative Dutton is the reason why HISD was taken over by the state, which is false.
Right.
There were a lot of things in 2015, which was 10 years ago. A lot of you all didn't even know HISD existed. And
because I wasn't even working in HISD then.
right, so it was a lot of, and I was, and I worked in the Northeast schools. And what I can say, the Northeast schools were being neglected by the then superintendent, Terry Greer. And they had taken all of the resources out of the Northeast schools and moved them to the West. And that's a lot. People are not talking about this.
Right.
And when I worked there, and I'm just going to tell you my experience, when I worked at Cashmere Gardens, we had 3 computers for 1 class.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is they were not the laptops, they were the desktops, and you had a little station over there and they were set up and kids had to take turns.
And see, we were in the portable, so we had 3 laptops, and I was like, what I'm supposed
Yeah.
to do with this? Yeah, because that, and honestly, it took me aback because I had never, and I worked in HISD. I had come from an HISD school because I was part of Achieve 180.
Right.
And I just like, I can't do it. Then Hurricane Harvey hit. The reason why Cashmere Gardens got classroom sets of Chromebooks is because of me.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how they ended up with Chromebooks. Because I told my principal, I said, we can't continue like that. I said, these kids need technology. Yeah. And he listened, and he asked the district for however many hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I was like, you gonna ask for that much? He said, all they can do is say no.
Well, you know what, Michelle, I want to walk us back around to this point because here's the thing, and I have my own take on what's going on with HISD. You cannot lay that situation or this situation that's transpired within the last 3 years squarely in the lap of one person.
Correct.
I could see HISD's methodology failing for the past 20 years.
Yeah, because
the way things were being done. It's been failing for a long time. And here's the thing. We recognize that it was failing, but no one seemed to be able to come up with a plan that they were willing to take the backlash of implementing to start to turn things around.
Well, one of the major problems I saw, I don't know about you, but coming into the district in 2016 as a teacher, because I worked in HISD before as a substitute teacher, one of the things that I noticed was the front office was top heavy.
Always.
It was super top heavy.
Absolutely.
It was like you look up and it was a new department being introduced
That's
every
right.
single year.
Yeah.
You know, it went from having teacher development specialists to then we had data specialists, and then it was just a lot. Then you had the curriculum writers, and it was just like they were adding new departments every year to do pretty much the same thing. Like the data specialist and the TDS specialist, that really could have been just one thing. And then when they would come and do like professional developments with us, a lot of times we were super confused because it was like, no, I hear what you're saying, but
They
last
told us,
week
yeah.
when we met with the data specialist, she said, and it was just
The
like
right
we
hand
was
didn't know what the left
constantly
hand was
in a
doing.
state
Yeah.
of confusion. Then I think up until 2018, they even had evaluation specialists. And their sole job, literally, their sole job was to make sure that the evaluations were in order. And in my head, I'm like, well, isn't that the principal's job? So it was just like, it was a constant state of confusion. And these jobs were not paying pennies. These were like six-figure jobs.
Right.
These people were making 80, 90, $100,000 a year to come give us the same information 3 and 4 and 5 different times.
Yeah.
And not to mention that, they were not allowing the principals to run the campuses. So when, a lot of people was like, well, we shouldn't have decentralization. Well, we had competent principals at the time. And we did. Decentralization began when I first started teaching. That's when they started to decentralize. We had experienced principals,
Right.
not the novices. And prior to this takeover, I'm talking about all of those. We didn't have novice principals. We had people who had taught 10 years,
Yeah.
15 years.
And then
That-
went into administration. Yes.
Right.
And they were APs for 8, 9
Right.
years.
And they learned the process.
Right, and they didn't need anybody to hold their hands.
Right.
So then you started getting these novices or these teachers who felt like, oh, I taught 3-4 years
Yeah.
and I know something, and you
Right.
don't. You know
That's
nothing.
Right.
You know the 3 years worth of stuff that you know.
Right.
And at the end of the day, now you got incompetent principals
Yeah.
trying to manage a budget and just messing up things. And back then they were spending money on decorum in the foyer and Christmas.
Yeah.
Like it was a whole bunch of foolishness.
Yeah.
And I'm saying all this to say is that I get that people are upset that HISD was handed to the state. And I'm saying handed to the state because
You're right.
at the end of the day, it was a lot of failure on a lot of people's part, a lot of failure on the community's part,
Right.
Yeah.
a lot of failure on the parents' part,
Yeah.
and a lot of failure on the elected trustees. And I know people are gonna be like, well, we didn't do, yes, you did. You did. Because at the end of the day, when they were fighting, when that video came out, I had reached out to Elizabeth Santos. And I'm saying this on video, and you can quote me. I reached out to her and asked them to stop what they were doing. And I told her I was disappointed in her because she was a teacher at the time. And y'all know better. I said, you all are tearing our district apart.
Right.
And like I told the teachers now, they're trying to say elected versus appointed. No, I don't care if they're elected, appointed, or ordained.
Yes.
The accountability should be the same for whomever is governing HISD.
That's right.
And we need to accept the truth about what HISD was and was not doing at the time. And that's where I am. House Bill 1842 is spilled milk. But to take it further, Representative Dutton did not introduce an amendment. And that was a question that was asked today. I said he did not. What happened was HISD was handing itself to the state. They were going to win their lawsuit. Well, just in like Republican fashion, they then went during session in 2021, look it up if you so choose to,
Yeah.
Senate Bill 1365 came into play. Now, remember, the lawsuit was filed in 2019. It had been 2 years. 19 plus 2 is 21. Stay
Right.
with me. So 2021, Senate Bill 1365 came into play, which retroactively said that if you were failing in 2014, now mind you, House Bill 1842 was 2015. So even before House Bill 1842 was written, they went beyond that and stripped the schools of the protection from COVID. That's why we had non-rated schools. But if you
Right.
weren't non-rated, and you had an F, because it wasn't fair, they still counted it
Yeah.
in Senate
Yeah.
Bill 1365. So in
Yeah, 'cause
2020,
I couldn't, that logic didn't make no kind of sense
Right.
to me.
so in
Like, how you account for something that's not accountable? That don't even make sense.
Exactly. So when the Texas Supreme Court ruled in HISD's case, they already had the Texas Senate set them up for that.
Okay, well, Michelle, here's the thing, and hindsight is always 2020. When I look back at how the takeover happened, as the HISD board, and you come to a place where you have been given the opportunity to correct something for a long time, and that correction has not taken place. When the HISD board, or when whoever were the authors of this takeover, whoever the authors were, okay? Because you can't lay it in the lap of one person, okay? The only thing, and I'll be honest, and I may get a lot of flack for saying this, something needed to happen.
It did.
Something needed to happen in HISD.
And that's why
Yeah.
Gail Fallon of the Houston Federation of Teachers signed off on the bill.
Yeah.
And this is what I want people, and that's why I keep saying the truth. Tell the truth about what is going and what happened. It wasn't a bad bill, but the thing about it is, my question to people, what should be the consequence for failure?
Right.
Because they were failing, HISD's board was failing and had been failing the students.
Right.
So what should be the consequence? Now, I stop at no, it should not go to the state because the state can't govern itself.
Right. Because it's bad when TEA is out of compliance.
Right.
I love like some rice.
Yes.
But here's the thing, y'all, and I'm gonna go back to this. I'm gonna say this again. The only thing that I would have done differently, yes, something needed to happen, and it needed to happen fast. The only thing that I would have done differently is this. I would have stated that we needed to have people from HISD, at least half of who was going to be in charge of taking this district forward. Half voted on. I understand that the state needed to come in and have some say. So let half of them be from the state, half of them be the ones that we voted on from HISD, and I think we would have ended up in a different situation, because we wouldn't have had a situation whereby you have someone who is an autocrat, okay, who feels like they don't want to take any suggestions. They don't want to be called to the carpet for anything, nor questioned about anything. Then when you need your people to be able to step up and support you, you cannot figure out why that support is not coming.
Well, the thing about it is, let's call a spade a spade. The community, I'm not a taxpayer in Houston Independent School District. I'm a stakeholder by way of employment.
Right.
I pay taxes to Spring ISD, which when they don't do right, I show up at their board meetings.
Absolutely.
That wasn't happening in HISD. And
Yeah,
then
that's right.
you had fighting among racial groups, white, black, Hispanic. We know that was going on in HISD, which continues to be perpetuated under this appointed administration. So,
But I think what people got put out with Dudley about, and this is just from residents that he represents in the area that have even talked to my parents. He never came to the community and said what was going on. And when his constituents
Yeah.
went to Austin to confront him, he never said anything, spoke. It was always, I'm a center representative. I'm a center representative.
You
So
gotta face your
even
people.
if your name is on the bill and it got misconstrued, my dad knows Dudley personally. My dad will defend him to this day and say, I don't think he meant for
and I agree with that.
and but my thing is, if that's what you did, because see what it looks like to your community who voted for you, what it looks like.
You sold HISD out.
Right, you threw your rock and hide your hand, and now we want to talk to you, and you are not responding to it.
And that is what I want to hear.
Right.
And that's like we hold them accountable because when I have something to say to him, I pick up this little device and text him.
Yeah.
Right. So I think
But
that's
everybody
where-
doesn't have the ability to do that. So those people who don't, you've got a forum that's coming up where they can actually ask the
Yeah,
questions.
right.
that they have.
Ask the questions. But my thing is, we're looking for solutions, and
Yeah.
that's a viable question. Why didn't you clear this up
right.
with the community? Because we voted for you to represent us, and the way that the media spins it is that it was you. But when you look at the paperwork, it wasn't you.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
And then a lot of our people, and we talked this before we went on air, a lot of our people don't do research. They only go by what they hear and what they see. And if you are not stepping forward and say, because some of the people who did sign on to the bill, some of those elected officials, they went back to their people and apologized. I was there for one of them who said, this is not what I was told. I was told it was going to be this thing, and then when it was put out, it was something else.
Right.
But that's what I'm saying. I think that's where the disconnect came in. We voted for you. You are responsible to answer to us. You know, even if you don't know what happened, which I doubt you wouldn't, but even if you don't know, it is still your responsibility as an elected official to say, you know what, I don't know what happened. But this is not what I did. This is what I did. Now, from what I did to where it went to another branch of the House, branch of the Congress, I can't tell you that.
Right. And that's my thing. And I want people to understand that type of accountability is what needs to be done, whether we friends or not, baby. This is business.
Right.
Okay. We can be friends later on.
Right.
But I need to know why you went up there and did that.
Right.
And it shouldn't be like I told a lady today. She was like, well, the bill is harmful and it needs to be revised. But she didn't even understand 1365 is the one that needs to be revised.
1846.
And you see what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
but I asked her, I said, is demonizing him going to help you
Right.
get anything done? He's not going to do anything if you continue to demonize him.
And he can't do nothing.
And he don't even have the votes.
Okay. Here's what I'm saying, Michelle. At this point, based on where we are right now, where this contract was just renewed for another 2 years,
5.
for another 5 years, are we at a place? Do you believe that we're at a place where the powers that be right now in HISD are willing to come back to the table and do a reset so that the district can move ahead in a way that people have confidence in?
No. First of all, HISD will never be made whole because the community is not whole.
Explain that.
That means that we still have fighting in the West. The West wants to do the home rule, charter rule. They said that and then you got the Northeast who's disengaged, and then you have other people who are in the middle. Democracy is about accountability of the people. The people are not there.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Until the HISD community comes together, and this goes for any community, we are the buffer. And I went to a webinar where UT did their presentation on takeovers. You know why certain takeovers didn't happen? Because of the community. And you know why takeovers ended early? Because of the community.
Right.
That's the crux of democracy. And I don't think people get it. The problem that I saw with HISD, and I have always said this, people are trying to be friends with their representatives.
Yeah.
And why are you trying to be friends with the board members when the board members are not serving the community? They didn't do half the stuff that they were supposed to do.
Okay, more so than at any other time in history have I seen the community come forth in with this particular situation. Have I seen them come forward with their disdain?
Well, it's spilled milk now. But here's my thing.
As far as shortening the tenure of this
But
takeover.
it didn't happen overnight.
That's right.
And that's what I told them about Cashmere High School.
Yeah.
Cashmere was failing for 10 years. But when they were talking about closing the school, then you want to show up at Hattie Mae. That's when Jerry Monroe and them got thrown out of Hattie Mae that night at the board. You see what I'm saying? But where are you all when the school started failing?
Right.
And that's why I said the community is not whole. They don't understand their responsibility to the schools. I don't care if you don't have kids. I don't have any kids in Spring ISD school,
Yeah.
but I go down there because my money, I want to return on my investment.
That's right.
And when I'm in the nursing home, I want somebody who can read a syringe.
That's right.
So I'm just saying, like, that's ROI. And when I pay my taxes, I expect for Spring ISD to spend it well and return on my investment, which is educating these children.
Right.
And that's not happening in Houston. Until Houston comes together, the community and the teachers understand their responsibility, it will never be whole. The state will always have a grip on Houston ISD. I'm telling you what I know. I told you I was in Louisiana. It will not happen. The community has to check its own self. And the West, and I'm saying this out loud because that's who I am. The West has to understand you are only as strong as your weakest link.
Absolutely.
So what happens if you pull and become this home rule charter and one of your schools start failing?
Yeah.
And then it's not going to be fun because here's the thing, you're going to have to make a decision. So what you going to do? Kick them out of your little thing?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? And then here's another thing about funding. It ain't, people don't even understand. The money ain't on the West. The money is in the East. Where's the Port of Houston located at?
Hobby Airport.
Where's Hobby Airport?
Southeast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no, people have this misconstrued. And I think I was at one meeting and one lady said, y'all have always taken our money from the Southeast and the East and given it to the West. And she's
Okay.
correct.
Well, let me ask you this, because you
And
have
the
been.
problem with that is
Mhm.
on the southeast, all them people over there in their 80s and 90s.
Yep.
So it's like you don't have any younger people coming over there and stepping up. You might have a handful,
Well,
but you don't have enough of them
and
stepping up.
not enough who can. Now there are a lot of younger people over there, but they're not in a position to be able to vote and affect those changes. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
a lot of
because
people
a lot
over
of
there.
them are not eligible to
That's-
vote
that's
for
right.
immigration.
That's
Right.
Right.
So it's like, so then how do you bridge that community piece? Because I'm still talking to parents and I'm long gone and I'm still talking to parents and the parents still have no clue what's going on. And then I said, okay, y'all don't have an excuse anymore. You got phones.
I was just about to say that
Y'all
at this
have-
point, it's on them. At some point, you can't
But
force them.
but Crystal, I still say because, and we, like Michelle said, we have to just be real about it.
Mhm.
Schools have coddled parents as well.
Oh, yeah.
And because we've coddled them for so long, anything, they depend on any and everything we say. We can send home wrong information and they gonna take it as gospel. because teachers and campuses have overextended themselves, not only coddling children, but we've also coddled the parents. So now we're in this tizzy where we're trying to tell parents, this is what's happening, y'all go fight. Well, how do you expect them to fight when we've been coddling them and protecting them all these times?
And teachers have taken the brunt and have done too much. These are not our children. And that's what I tell people. I said first, and that's why I have an issue with religion. First of all, these ain't my kids.
Right.
Because if they were, they'd be in a better position.
Right.
So parents have to fight for their children. And that's one thing I have learned, that parents don't know how to fight for their children.
And many parents, the ones that I have worked with, they love their children, but then for reasons that we've just talked about, they are afraid to step up and make their voices heard.
And I understand it from that perspective. But then you have the other perspective who don't have that issue.
Who are just complacent.
Who don't have that issue.
No, who show up.
Oh, okay.
You know?
Yeah.
But
they show up.
But it's still not enough of them for the numbers.
Well, and the thing about it is, when you look at the demographics of Houston Independent School District, the vast majority of people who, where the numbers are, the vast majority, they're not going to be the ones that show up.
Well, here's my issue too. We need to fix the teacher issue, especially on the bilingual side.
Yes.
And I've had this conversation, and don't get me wrong, I understand why we have bilingual education.
Right.
But the teachers don't understand why we have bilingual education.
What do you mean?
Bilingual education is research-based.
Right.
Because it states if a child is literate in their first language,
Yes.
they're able to acquire a second language.
Absolutely.
We don't teach Spanish.
Right.
Spanish is taught so that kids can learn English. And that's not what's being communicated to these children. I've had conversations with teachers, and I said, the worst thing that you can do is put a crutch, a language barrier, and say, oh, this child needs it in Spanish. No. What you're doing is setting them up for failure.
Right.
Because what they found in the research is that if a child does not shed that English language learner label in elementary school, it puts them at risk for dropping out.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
And a lot of them do.
And a lot of them do. So that's something that's being communicated in those bilingual classes. And some of the bilingual teachers I know don't agree with as much Spanish as their kids are getting.
Right.
So that's why I say you can't say that one person is responsible for
Where we are.
Yeah. It is going to take the community together and having conversations like we're having. I don't have the solution. I don't. But what I do know is until the community comes together, HISD is always going to be a mess. And you can't break it up because what did I just tell you about the funding?
Yeah.
The money is not on the West.
It's not equitably divided.
Right. You're taking
and whose responsibility is that to equitably divide those resources?
The people we elect.
Yeah. Okay, so I can be sitting at a board meeting, an elected person, Michelle from the southeast side. You can be an elected person from the northeast side. Rebecca can be from the west side, and the money that is in the pot. You can argue your point for Rebecca and I to give you more money. Why would that money not be split equitably?
Because 2% of the district runs the whole district. So that has been,
because of the tax base.
No, because of what we look like and who shows up. The HISD and Jolanda Jones, I have to give her credit for this. She is the one that made me realize that there were inequities within HISD. For example, HISD would, remember how we used to have to do warm body counts?
Mm-hmm.
Guess where they didn't do that at?
The west side.
The West got paid, their schools got paid on rosters.
Right.
We had to do warm body counts.
Yeah.
You see
At
that?
10:15. At 10:15.
Yeah. For the first week of school, we had to do
Yeah.
warm body count.
Yes.
Who was there counting the kids?
Doing the cars, and you right.
Yep.
Because I had a friend that worked at TA Drive. So I said, "Girl, I'm tired of doing these cars every year." She said, "What cars?"
Yep.
Yeah.
I said, "No, the cars that the kids got."
Yeah, we don't do that in Fort Bend.
She said, "We
Yeah.
don't do that."
Yeah.
But we're talking about
Those
a
pink and blue cars.
school system. You see what I'm saying? So there were inequities within HISD that were already happening.
Michelle, but the thing about it is, could that not have been addressed within HISD? We could have when we had a
But
chance.
that you have to have people on a school board who are not using the school board as a springboard
Or something.
for something else.
Yeah.
You have to have people that are invested and not invested in one demographic of kids. And that's what I wasn't a Granita Lathan fan.
Okay.
I don't care what color she was.
I wasn't a fan of hers.
She was a treacherous person. And she kept up a lot of hostility and divided the district more. But Hispanics can't just represent Hispanics.
That's right.
We have to take care of all of the children in HISD.
Right.
And that's in any other school district because you're only as strong as your weakest link. The chain doesn't break because all the links break.
Right.
It breaks because of one.
Yeah.
Wheatley was our one. You see what I'm saying? So if we take the mentality that we're representing and taking care of all the children,
Right.
we won't have this problem. But until we get there, HISD is always going to be in the crux, in the grip of the state of Texas.
Okay, so because people don't want to hear that right now, you need to leave us, Michelle, leave us on a positive note. Where can you see HISD in the next couple of years? And when this smoke cloud has passed, what are we going to need to do as a district in order to upright the ship?
First, you're going to have to get you some representatives that really care about HISD. HISD is home for me.
Right.
It has its issues, but it's home. And a lot of the things that I do is because of HISD.
Right.
But we're going to have to come together. And I see HISD, if those things are in place,
Yeah.
we can build it back up. Nothing that was torn down can't be rebuilt, but we need to rebuild it in a way that
It's
is
sustainable.
not, it's sustainable. This NES stuff, that is not teaching.
Oh,
that,
no,
that's
it's not.
nothing.
It's not. And the thing about it is, it just
No, it is something. Let me tell you what it is.
What?
Destroying our kids.
Well,
It is.
but
We don't have a whole
here's-
bunch of
here's
uneducated.
the thing.
That's what it's doing.
It's something that is not sustainable. It was not a proven effective method. Okay, there are a whole lot of other. Tell me when it was proven effective and where.
Well, my
And
thing
why
is,
those schools are closed.
the thing about it is, some of it is effective because he stole it from other people.
Well, yeah. Well, but it's not. So that's right.
So you see what I'm saying? So this is what he does. He say it is research based. Yeah, from other people's programs.
Okay.
All of the stuff that he has, those are not things that he created. There's not original
If you could turn back the hands of time. You know, and I know we've been saying that we can't, literally. But if you could turn back the hands of time.
Or not even say that. Say if we could start from right now. If that was the ability to start from right now.
Okay. What would be like the one thing that you would say? Absolutely not, because if we do this, we gonna just self-destruct.
I think we need to get our leaders on board, the Harris County Democrats who support public education, to have one unified message about HISD.
And what about, we know that half of the people in the outer line part of Harris County are not Democrats. Is there any way to get both parties
Well,
aligned?
like I said in the Facebook group, I talked to all of them. Ben
Yes.
Ford's chief of staff put me out of his office. So, and I'm going to go back because that's what it takes. We have to have a way to find things that we can work together on. We're not going to agree on everything.
Right.
Martin Luther King said it best: either we're going to learn to live as brother or
Die
die
together as fools. So Michelle, you and I talked the other day about the area that you're in. There are a lot of people who you are absolutely right about this. They do not have kids maybe in school at this point, but like you said, your neighbors, they're extremely, extremely concerned about their property taxes. You had some really, really poignant things to say about the direction that property taxes are going in here in Harris County and what you would do if you were elected to try to affect change for that. What are some of the things that you would do?
Well, first of all, the state of Texas needs to take responsibility for funding public education. It is not
Yes.
the responsibility of property owners. So like in Spring ISD, I sent an email to their board trustees
Mm-hmm.
and told them that you all got it wrong. I said, because it is not our responsibility to fund public education. Local taxes are supposed to supplement, not supplant what the state is
Right.
giving.
Say it one more time so
Yeah.
that people can understand what you just said. Yeah.
So local taxes are supposed to supplement,
Right.
like fill those gaps
That's
where
right.
state funding. And for some reason, it has
It's the other way
split.
around. Right.
And that's what I told them. I said, you all have passed the burden of funding public education onto taxpayers.
Right.
I'm not taking that. Go get your money from the state of Texas.
Right.
Under the Constitution.
Which gets their money from where?
Which gets it from the whole state. All our money comes from the government, state of Texas, sales tax, all those things
Right.
that,
The lottery.
yeah,
Yeah.
lottery, all that money, that surplus comes to us. But we don't have school board members that are willing to call the state of Texas on the carpet. And that's what I would do, is to urge them and be a voice for public schools. You don't have to be afraid of the backlash. A
Right.
lot of them don't do it because they're going to take off. They're taking it anyway.
Yeah.
Spring ISD gets more funding because it's not a large school district. HISD is self-funded.
Right.
What are they going to take? The 279 that they was taking anyway for recapture?
Yeah.
HISD, 90% of HISD funding comes from local taxes.
Right.
It might as well be its own school district,
Yeah.
whereas smaller districts don't have that. But HISD, when I started teaching, it used to be the beacon of light because it would call the state. And then you had the other school districts that would follow suit. But HISD is no longer that because they can fund litigation. They can, and they have the city of Houston behind them.
Right.
But we have to fight. We have to, and that's why my slogan for my campaign is speak up, stand up, and fight together.
And you know what, Michelle? Hopefully we can figure out a way to do that before some of the districts or some of the areas and the municipalities within Houston ISD are so frustrated that, like Bel Air, they attempt to petition for their own school district.
They'll be in debt until their great-great-grandchildren.
But the thing about it is, that's not something that was happening under the other administration.
It wasn't. But the thing about it is, it goes back to the community. Why are you all, and that's my thing, when they come to these board meetings, they represent their area. Stop representing your area and say, I'm representing the Houston ISD community.
Right.
That I is what got HISD in this situation. Community, it's we. That's what community means. Stop speaking up for yourselves. And until that community learns that they're constantly, our community, speak up for all of the school district.
One last thing, Michelle, because we have to get this addressed for the teachers out there, because we've been battling for the last 3 days. Same stuff. Cause she won't let me cuss. But the bill the hot topic bill right now about teacher raises from the state of Texas. Now, $6,000 if you $5,000 if you
5 years.
5 years, and I think it's like maybe 3,000 for
I thought it was 2,500.
2,500. Yeah, I was close for first year. Now, with the teachers of HISD specifically, because all the districts are giving their teachers their raises.
I saw that.
So, can you explain to the teachers and to the families or whoever's watching how all of that is unfolding?
In HISD.
In HISD, because the HISD teachers are in a frenzy right now.
Because they said that they were going to get how much as a raise?
First of all, let's
like I
start.
said,
Oh, yeah.
0.
I thought it was $500.
But no, because he told the board he wasn't. The last board meeting I was at, Michelle was there present. He told
He did that because HISD didn't have the money to give the raises. That's why that statement was made. So that clears that up. The money that's coming from House Bill 2 is allotted and paid for the state legislature,
Right.
meaning that it's earmarked
For teachers.
for teachers.
Yes.
Nothing else can be done with that.
Right.
Now, the issue that we're having with HISD teachers, because they're looking at these other school districts,
Yeah.
compensations in every school district have to be approved by the board.
Right.
They would know this if they paid attention to the board calendar.
Yeah.
HISD had its last board meeting June 12th.
Right.
So they have to take it up. It won't be taken up if it's taken up in July. I'm pretty sure the compensation manual will be updated.
Right.
And at the August meeting, it'll be approved.
Okay.
And they're going to have to give the money because the money is coming from the state. It's not coming from the district.
So where Miles tried to strong arm and say, oh, I'm not giving a raise and it's only going to be dependent upon performance. That's something that the state supersedes.
But wait a minute, there's an amendment in the bill and I just saw it today, and I was gonna ask you about it. That's why I was like, let me hold my tongue until I talk to you.
Right.
There is an amendment, it's a loophole in the bill that says that gives him the directive to, how did they put it, to be a loan for pay for performance. So he really,
That's it. So House Bill 2 is a plethora of things. TIA is in there too.
yeah.
So
So you know the bill that I'm talking about.
right. So the TIA money is different. So they earmark, and I got this from Bittencourt's chief of staff. They earmarked the money the way that they did because, like I told them, the money y'all send to these school districts, we'll never see it.
Yeah.
So they earmarked everything. Now, was that the right thing to do? I don't know, but we never see the money anyway.
Yeah.
'Cause everybody got a pet project.
Cause then
Right.
you said, all y'all get this $153.
So I'm like, it's
Before taxes.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
So, at the, the money is going to be there. They allotted 500 million for other, like librarians, nurses.
Right.
Now, that's
Nurse,
going to be
yeah.
the issue, that they were trying to take care of teachers. As misguided as it was, they didn't even, they
Consider.
0 to 2, they get nothing
Yeah.
unless the district gives them money. 3 to 5 to 2,500, and over that 5,000. But them 0 2, they didn't give them anything. So the TIA money is in House Bill 2 too. So what that did is boosted the allotment for the teacher incentive allotment.
So Michelle, as a closing thought, if you, as someone who sat in the position of a union leader, of a classroom teacher, of a parent, and of a taxpayer, why would you tell people over in House District 127 that it's time for them to consider some new initiatives?
Because if, first of all, because if they don't, I can say this about my opponent, Representative Cunningham. He's going to sell their district over to charter schools. Right now, House District 127 doesn't have many charter schools.
Right.
And if they want to keep it that way, you know, they boast about Humble ISD, but if he has his way, he's going to chop that district up and sell it off. He's a pro-charter person and he wants to bring more charter schools. And I personally don't have anything against charters, but where the rubber meets the road is it's not a public school because they don't abide by the same rules.
Yeah,
And you don't disenfranchise or defund one system to fund another.
absolutely not. And I feel exactly the same. We've taught in charter schools.
Yeah.
We've taught in charter schools. We believe that there's a place. There's a place for charter schools in some instances. There is. However, the money for the charter schools should not come at the expense of the public schools.
Right, and that's where I am. And I am an advocate and a champion for public education. I believe in it. I believe that it is basically a beacon of democracy.
Right.
Just like I said, the community is what democracy is about.
Looks like. That's
And
right.
it holds everybody else accountable to we the people. And
Yes.
that's why, you know, for me, we have to get back to the people. We have to get the public education system
Right.
back to parents, the community, and local control.
Right.
Because the state, I've been looking at some of how they changed it. And the reason why we don't have collective bargaining in Texas is because they put the schools as political divisions of the state.
Right.
And political divisions are not real entities.
Right.
If we have to bargain, that's why we gotta go big, barter, and steal from the state, because the school districts are just representatives. They have no
Right.
power.
Well,
I know,
Michelle,
that's a lot.
you know, with the education issue right now, we know that we are all pushing that ball uphill, but one thing we can't stop doing is pushing, you
Right.
know? So, and that's all of us together. You're absolutely right. We're all going to have to figure out a way to get in that boat together and everybody paddle in order to be able to get us to a place. But with that in mind, Rebecca, you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just wanted Michelle to talk about her event that's coming up
Yes.
next Thursday.
And Emancipation Place.
Please. And I know some of you all are not going to register because y'all my people. I understand that. But if you can, at 10 a.m., June 26th, we're having a town hall meeting. I will be there along with Carmela Walker from the Urban League. Representative Dutton will be there. This is not a gripe fest.
Right.
We are trying, this is my effort to bring teachers to the table along with parents.
Right.
Y'all can come too, so that we can start to be a voice for current issues. Let people know, because they're not asking teachers, they're speaking for teachers.
Right.
And eventually we can be a powerhouse voting block so we don't get ignored anymore. But we have to start talking about these issues. So please, 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 if you see the flyer,
And we'll make sure that we post the flyer.
definitely, sign up, because now is the time. This is our David and Goliath moment. and I believe in the underdog.
And Rebecca, I'm gonna let you see us out with our normal chant that you know that we can do, but go ahead and thank Michelle for being here. I'm going to do this manually because my battery is dead, but go ahead and see us out.
So thank you, Michelle, for coming. Michelle, we're definitely gonna have you back for a part 2 because there's some other things that we haven't even touched on that we need to touch on for these teachers as they go back to school in the fall. But as we say, every closing out session, we can do it. Bye, guys.